if I ask myself, why am I just screwing myself over? My brain's only going to come up with negative answers like, well, it's because you're a loser, or because you just can't control yourself, or because you're a bad trader, or because I'm too nervous because I don't think I'm going to have enough money to retire. But what you really need to be asking is, how can I do something different?
Welcome back, everyone. Hope you're doing fine. Today I'm sitting down with David Bonanno. He's a really cool guy talking about strength psychology. Started working with traders a few years back after working with guys that had PTSD. It's a really cool story to kind of hear about, and how he really got to use his knowledge of PTSD to work with traders. A lot of commonalities and things that he's able to do with traders. So it's pretty cool. Having a different approach. And in this interview, we talk about a lot of myths that traders face, a lot of common advice that doesn't really work well, and a different way, a different perspective to look at it. Hope you like this one, and we'll dive right into it. So sitting down today with David Bonanno, or Dr. David Bonanno. Look forward to talk about mindset. It's a topic I've been really looking forward to talk about with you, and kind of talking about why traders have trouble sometimes, how they can overcome it, and a bit of action step to really work on your mindset as a trader. So good to have you on our podcast, Dr. David.
Yes, thank you. It's great to be here.
Let's begin with you telling the audience kind of what you do these days and what you're really focused on.
So I'm not a trader, but I focus on mindset problems, and it's all psychology. So my skills have translated very well. And one thing I want to say is that I want you guys to understand on a deeper level what's happening inside of you when you start to go on tilt, or when you make a bad decision, or when you can't follow your rules. And so I'd like to talk about that and how I arrived at that theory, because I was working with people with PTSD. And, a lot of times people will tell you, like, if you're not following your rules, well, try this rule, or try this rule, or change your thoughts this way. But I think what's happening is underneath, and that's really important. So I myself, as a person, have always been fascinated by one question, which is, how come, if you're a smart person, why do smart people do stupid shit a lot of the times? Oftentimes we don't act in our own best interest. And then when we try to analyze it with our logical brain, it just doesn't make sense. So, and I'm not talking so with traders, I mean, they're intelligent people, and they're capable, and they're motivated. And I have people come to me and they say that it's driving them crazy how they can't even trust themselves to follow their own rules. And I mean, recently I just talked to somebody who lost $3.5 million, and it was pretty quick. And he tried harder and harder to stop that. But I mean, I'm just trying to imagine how crazy that must have been feeling, And then, of course, once you get into that cycle, you try harder, and that makes everything worse, right? So it's not that you're a weak person. I want people to know that. Of course, when I make a mistake, I often feel angry at myself. But what's really going on is we have two brains at the same time. So there's your logical brain, which is your willpower and your analytics and your decision making and stuff like that. But then there's also your emotional brain. And the thing is, the emotions take over when you have adrenaline. And of course, that could be from anxiety, or for fear, or definitely from anger. And so when people get into trouble, they're trying to stay analytical. They're trying to have their willpower control their emotional brain, but there's only so much of that. So then what happens is, it's just like in PTSD, you go into fight or flight. And so fight is anger, and then flight is when you're afraid or anxious. And it's just, your brain is designed to take over at that point. Does that sound sort of like what your people say, Etienne?
Definitely. I feel like before we go there, I kind of want to ask you, what got you interested in traders specifically? Did you start with kind of trading in the first place, or is this something you kind of moved to over time to work with traders?
I was in practice. I've been in the mental health field since 1993. And then I started working with people with PTSD, because I'm actually the first guy in America to start helping people to qualify for state medical programs. So I myself have talked to over 17,000 people who suffer from trauma, and that's a different perspective than a lot of people have. There's no real definition of PTSD. Like, if you look it up, there's just a list of symptoms, So the way that I describe it is when you have more adrenaline than the regular person, and then when you're triggered, your adrenaline goes up really high and then it comes down really slowly. So that's when people get into trouble. Like if they see red or if they lose their temper or if they do things that they regret, it's because their logical brain is offline. The thing about people with PTSD is they don't know how to quantify what I've done for them. So like I could help people turn their whole life around and then they still want to use their insurance and have a $25 copay. Whereas with traders, they might tell me they lost $15,000 yesterday. And then I'm like, well, yeah, you can pay me a few thousand of that. So the, the, the parallels are really there. Like it's not that you have PTSD, it's that you're just not in control the way you want to be. And even maybe a small part of you knows that you're not like, it's like an angel and a devil, you know? And once you get into that state where you're contemplating doing something that you know you shouldn't do, but your emotions keep saying like, yeah, but if I could just get this one more, if I could just, feel good again, like being in that state of decision making is so unpleasant in itself that there's two ways to get out of it. It's either you really double down and you just really try hard not to break your rules, but you would have done that already. And it's by then it's too late. So what people do is what feels best, which is to just click that button and then you feel better right away until you find out what happens and then you feel terrible. And then once you feel bad, that adds adrenaline to the whole situation. And if you're angry or ashamed or embarrassed or hurt or anxious, then you're adding more adrenaline and it just sets up a whole cycle.
A lot of traders I feel are thinking that next time is going to be different. Like they go in the market, they might make a mistake, and then they say, "Well, next time I'll do better. I'll be able to not click the button. I'll be able to like stay away, or I'll do something different." And then they go back, and then the same thing happens. What tend to cause that? How can you get out of it?
Yeah, it's really kind of like an addiction that way. And I think like shame is a part of that. So guilt is when you feel bad about doing something, and shame is where you really kind of feel like a bad person. And that just is goes hand in hand with like secrecy and trying to and it maintains that addictive cycle. So when people get really upset with themselves, they're thinking that that's the motivation that they need in order to go straight and to do what they need to do. But I maintain that it's really kind of makes everything worse. Like if you add emotion to an emotional problem, then you're just making it worse. And a lot of people, it's hard for them to get out of their logical brain because, I mean, traders are very logical people and you have to use your logical brain in order to understand the technical parts and everything. But where I'm coming from is I'm saying that this is an emotional problem and you can't just treat it with logical ways. You can't just like, setting your stop loss. Of course, that's a good idea, but you're not solving the problem. Or like just telling yourself that I'm definitely going to follow my rules this time is not the answer. And unfortunately, a lot of trading advice just doesn't really work in the end because it's more of like trying to change your thoughts. And there's such a big difference between knowing how you should be or knowing what you should do versus how to actually do it, right?
Definitely. I mean, a lot of advice you hear is like, "Oh, stick to your plan, follow your strategy, like don't over risk or don't over leverage." All these things are good until you just don't follow them and you can't do anything about it.
Yeah, right. And that just feels crazy. And then you start to feel like, oh my gosh, I can't even trust myself. And then you start to ask yourself, because, when you ask yourself a question, why am I doing this? Your brain is going to come up with answers to it. It's very literal. And so if I ask myself, why am I just screwing myself over? My brain's only going to come up with negative answers like, well, it's because you're a loser or because you just can't control yourself or because you're a bad trader or maybe it's like because I'm too nervous because I don't think I'm going to have enough money to retire. But what you really need to be asking is how can I do something different? And what I try to do for people at the end is I try to get them to avoid that battle in the first place. So, like, let's say you're trying to lose weight, and somebody who's like a coach might tell you like certain tips and tricks. Like for me, when people say like, "Oh, I want you to give me a tip or how to like what are the tricks for having discipline," I don't really like that so much because it's not tips and tricks. You really need to address the problem at the root. I have a friend who lost a whole lot of weight, and his thing was eating bread. That's what he really loved. And he finally got to a point where he said, I know I can eat bread whenever I want to, but I just don't want to. So when other coaches might tell you like, well, don't keep junk food in the house or try to count your calories, basically what they're really kind of saying is like, just try harder and don't put food in your mouth. Like you'll lose weight if you don't put food in your mouth. Well, what if you could get to a point where you didn't really want to? And so what I do is it's a different type of intervention. So it's based on, I use eye movements. So what happens is I move my hand like this and people move their eyes back and forth. Or if we're doing it online, there's a ball that moves across the screen and it's based on EMDR, which is a therapy for PTSD. It's been around for 40 years and you can look it up. It's called eye movement desensitization reprocessing. And it helps you to change your subconscious right where you need to be. So like if somebody has a really bad trade and they just can't get over it and maybe even not consciously aware of it, but it's still in here in your heart, what we can do is we can have the person remember what happened, but they don't have to talk about it. And then you have them rewrite the story and it just kind of goes away. But the thing about the eye movements is what really makes it work. You know what? It's really like hypnosis, but there's no trance. So like, imagine, there's been plenty of people out there who've gotten a lot of help with eating and they go to hypnosis and then they just don't really have that urge like they used to. And that's what I do for people is right where the rubber hits the road. I help them so that they just don't even have that urge to overtrade or to, be scared or whatever it is that is their problem at the time.
Is there a certain amount of people for whom that doesn't work out? You cannot retrain them that way.
That's a great question. Um, yeah, there's some people who are just so angry and they're trading in order to prove something. And usually it's something really big. It's subconscious. Like they're trying to prove that they're a good person, or maybe they're trying to provide a really nice life for them and their family. And for them, it's just hard not to see it as like a big, huge statement about who they are. And they really get invested in the outcomes, which is really unfortunate. I mean, what people should be focused on is their actual process and their decision making. And then, of course, you can never really know if you did the right thing because there's a million factors at play. So when it comes to people that really can't respond to the type of therapy I do, it's usually because they just can't get over their anger. And I mean, it's easy for me to say that when you're angry, it's like you're taking poison and you're hoping that, something else will get sick. But a lot of times they just can't let it go. So, what I tell people, Etienne, is if you're really mad about something that happened, what you're doing is you're not accepting reality. And what I try to preach is for people to actually feel sad instead of mad, because if you feel sad, it's not good. And of course, what you're doing is you are accepting reality, and the reality is that you were powerless and that you are powerless to change what already happened. But when you're angry, it feels better than sad because you feel this sense of power, and you're like, well, it should have been this way, and I should have done this, and it just should have been happening. Well, you're kind of shoulding all over yourself at that point, and living in shoulds doesn't really work for anybody. If you can actually quietly accept what happened, then you can move on. But if you're angry, you really can't. So I mean, easy for me to say, but I can really help people to take the energy out of that whole cycle.
One of the very popular tools that analysts talk about in terms of like helping traders get better is journaling. Like you hear this all the time, like, oh, you got to journal your trades to keep track of your trades. Tell me what's your view on journaling and how you can maybe make this even better.
Yeah, that's another good question. But so with journaling, you're trying to recreate what happened, and hopefully you'll notice what has gone wrong. Well, I actually have a ChatGPT online coach that is trained in all of my philosophies about trading, and it also uses those eye movements. And the way that that helps is because it allows you to be able to understand what was going on for you subconsciously when you were actually making that trade. So, the definition of subconscious is anything that's not conscious. And when people normally are trading, I mean, of course, it's good to kind of recreate those conditions in terms of the technicals, but you're kind of trying to guess at what you were feeling at the time. So let's say like um, what you were doing is in English, and then later on when you're trying to go back, it's in French. Like your two brain systems don't even really speak the same language. Like your logical brain and your subconscious brain. Your subconscious brain comes out when you're dreaming, for example, and then you wake up and your logical brain is like, "Oh, that was just a bunch of bull." So what I'm saying is, if you can recreate subconsciously what was happening for you at the time, like what you were feeling, then you're able to really connect with what was happening, and then you'll have an indication of what to look out for in the future. And then, of course, when you're using the eye movements, you're already kind of repairing the whatever problem was there in the first place. So journaling, of course, is good. It's a pain in the neck. It's worth it. But once again, it's just another rule that you're setting for yourself that you have an opportunity to break.
If someone came to you and they said, let's say I lost like $50,000 in market and I want to be able to recover and get back on track, what would be your process for them to go through to be able to get back on the right track?
Yeah, so when I meet with people, it's usually for like a five session interval, and a lot of those people haven't actually used all 5 sessions. But I'm really quick at helping people to discover the issue underneath, um, like, and it's usually psychological, And what I mean by that is, I'm not trying to blame their parents for everything, and a lot of traditional therapy just makes you relive all the worst moments that ever happened. But what I do is I help people with the eye movements to be able to narrow down on exactly what was happening. So if I could just give you an example, um, I had a guy who every time the market didn't go his way, he was thinking like, I'm just wrong. And he would feel like it was like he was a bad person, really. It was shame. And like, why can't I figure this out? I'm a really smart person. I should be able to predict what's going to happen. Well, of course, he's using his logical brain there, and that's not a very logical way to look at it. I mean, of course, we all know we have to think in terms of probabilities, and so you could do absolutely everything right, and it doesn't go your way. But when you're feeling like what's wrong, what I have people do is try to talk to that voice in their head that's telling them that. Like, we all have some kind of a critic, and it can be just horrible to us. I mean, we would never treat other people the way that we treat ourselves a lot of the times. And then I try to get people to recall, like, if there was an incident when they were growing up, or like, what's the worst time or the first time that they started to feel this way in their body, that they felt shame, that they felt they were wrong, and that they're not allowed to be wrong. Well, oftentimes, you know what? Like, if it's a guy, it's oftentimes their dad. And I've met a lot of people who have father issues, and we don't have to go into the whole thing. Like, we don't have to recreate your childhood or anything. But it seems to me like a lot of guys are trying to either be unlike their dad, like they want to prove to themselves that they're better than their dad, or they can't live up to their father. And it's not, like maybe even their dad could say, I'm proud of you, but it's not what it feels like. They don't feel it in their heart. And if you don't, then that's really going to affect every single thing you do. And you might always try to be proving that you're, a good person. So then we can work with that. I mean, like if you did something really good, like let's say a football player wins the Super Bowl, then he didn't do it to prove to himself that he's a good person. Like, when they stick the microphone in your mouth, that guy's not going to be like, you see, I'm not a loser. I'm not a loser. I'm good. I'm good. And it's just, you can't really be motivated that way. And there's only a certain amount of things you can focus on for motivation. So yeah, like that's just one example. There's somebody that I just worked with who's really afraid, and it's hard for him to enter, and he often enters too late and he exits too early, and he's just so afraid. Well, of course, that's all adrenaline. And, like our brain is designed for you to not be able to ignore adrenaline. Like, if you are walking in the woods and you see a bear, well, you go into fight or flight before you're not thinking about all the options. Like, should I run or should I do this or whatever? You're supposed to be acting or reacting. So our brain isn't set up for us to be happy and relaxed. It's set up for us to survive. Unfortunately, when it comes to trading, it's not necessarily about surviving. It's about making money and making smart decisions. So anyway, this person who was really afraid all the time, it's because he lost a whole lot of money. His business went under, and it wasn't really his fault, but it was just heartbreaking for him. And he wanted to provide for his wife and his kids, and they were homeless for a little while. And so that's kind of always on his mind. And instead of saying on his mind, I want to say that that's always in his heart. That's always in his subconscious brain. And so what we did was we had him remember what had happened, and then we have him write the story. So, he wrote the story that he just had a peaceful transition from operating his business to being a trader, and that everything was okay, and that he was a good dad and a good husband. And you know what? It's just crazy, Etienne, how people are able to let things go. I mean, this is the exact same formula that I was using for people with trauma. And, like with trauma, you might have a therapist say, like, I mean, one time I was talking to a therapist, and he said, the past is in the past. So it doesn't make sense for you to feel this way right now. And I was like, yeah, no shit. What am I still doing here on your couch then? I mean, like it's a lot more complicated than that. Well, it's not even complicated. It's simple, but we have to be approaching it in a different way. And with psychology, we've never really had a way to change the emotional brain directly. I mean, there is hypnosis, but you have to do a trance and you're not really talking to the person. So I used to practice hypnosis a whole lot, but I have never done that since I learned this EMDR eye movement therapy. And so I guess what I was saying is that for this person, he had to be able to let it go, get a fresh start. And sometimes even you have to do it on a micro level. Like if somebody has a bad trade and it's just pissing them off. If you can help them to kind of rewrite the story, like either that it was a good trade or that they did the right thing, but it was a bad outcome, then you can get a fresh start, and you can do it without that adrenaline that messes everything up.
I mean, this is cool stuff, definitely, for sure.
Thanks. I try to be different from everybody else. I don't want to ever say anything commonplace. I want people to think about things in a different way. And with the PTSD people, I don't know. I think sometimes people like to use their problems to feel special. And I just wasn't making too much money treating PTSD. So then my wife's uncle came to me, and he was having a psychological glitch. Like I like to call it just a little slip up, or just it's like a computer program where just there's a bug. So I mean, I don't want people to feel ashamed when they come to me and they're saying like, oh well, I'm just a weak person, like I just can't follow my rules, like I wish I was stronger. That's not it, because willpower, like I said, only goes so far. You have a little bit of a problem. There's no shame in that. If there's something wrong with your car, you don't feel like a bad person. You go and get the brakes fixed. I mean, it's simple as that. So when people come to me, that's how I view myself. I don't really help traders without psychological problems. That's for the technical people. But if somebody has a little bit of a thing that just screws them up, we can clear it up so fast. Or if you use my ChatGPT coach, you can do that before a session. You can get into the zone. And if you start to go on tilt, you can use it right then and there. And it can help you to get out of that battle before it really gets into the battle. It's not about winning the battle. It's about avoiding it altogether.
What would you say about a trader who doesn't have like big losses, they never have like a huge trauma, but they're not able to get profitable? They still make the wrong decisions. They still have issues. What's the thing you got to work on there?
You know what? I think one of the things is that your goals can really mess things up. Like if you're trying to get to a certain place, then you're going to either try too hard or you're just you're gonna be a little too relaxed, and then you end up trying too hard. So one of the things about prop firms, of course, they're great, but one of the problems I have with them is that it sets you up like early in your career to get into the habit of having these completely arbitrary, random numbers that you got to hit. Like if you could trade ideally, then you wouldn't. You would just make the best trade that you can, and for as ever how much money that you feel is right. But if you're trying to hit a certain number all the time, then it's unnatural. It takes you out of your instincts. You need to have intuition, and that's why I think AI is not going to replace us traders anytime soon, because it's a combination of both your logical brain and your intuitive brain. And of course, that is the exact same brain as your emotions. Another thing about goals that I think is really not so healthy is that sometimes people have a certain amount of money that they feel like they need to make overall in their life. Like if somebody is gearing up for retirement and they're like, well, I need to have $2 million before I can actually quit my job, which I hate. And then I can live the life of a trader and travel around the world and buy my wife, whatever, or my husband. And so I wish, what I really wish is that people didn't even know how much money in terms of dollars that they're making or losing. I wish it could be like some other way of measuring it so that once again, you're just trading to trade. Like you trading because you like it and you're trading to be successful, but it's impossible to get away from how much money did I just make? How much did I just lose? It just adds pressure, and that creates the conditions for people to screw up.
Definitely. You mentioned AI won't replace traders, but do you think AI can replace psychologists one day?
Yeah. Yeah, it's on a big level. Yeah. I mean, of course, there's always going to be a need for like really high level people, but there's a study where people rated the AI, and of course, they knew full well in their intellectual brain that it was not a person, but they rated it higher for empathy and understanding than they rate their friends and family. And that's that's not too good, because I mean, hopefully your friends and family, you would feel like they have empathy for you and they do understand what you're going through. I think that a lot of therapy, unfortunately, man, I got a real problem with how psychology has trained people to think that insight is what they need. So like, you go to somebody, they want you to just relive all the worst shit that ever happened in your whole life. And then we have to understand what happened. Well, I don't think you really need to understand what happened. And because, like you're just going to end up blaming other people anyway. You're going to blame your mom mostly, or your parents, or your conditions that you grew up in. It takes you off the hook. It removes your accountability. I mean, that's what I was taught in school, is to just kind of get people to blame other people. And I don't think that really works. And when it comes back to understanding, like some therapists have asked me, well, how can you fix a problem if you don't understand it? Well, you know what? Like, it's not like people are like a car. Like you trace the problem down to this one thing, and then you're able to just fix the starter, and now all of a sudden your car runs great. I mean, like, so many times people have said to me like, oh, well, it's because of your mother, because my mother was not the best. And I'm like, yeah, of course it was because of my mother. What do I do about it? So the what I talk about is, if you are in New York City and you want to be in Montreal, do you need to know everything about New York City? Do you have to look at maps of New York? Do you have to talk to everybody in New York? No, you need somebody to show you where Route 87 is and then point you in the right direction. And then you start to live the way that you want to. It doesn't even really matter what happened in the past. So I hope that answers your question. Oh, yeah. Will AI replace a lot of therapists? I think a lot of them, yes, will get replaced by AI in the future. It's a little bit sad to hear that, but actually, I think it's going to be overall a good thing for society.
Tell me where people can find you and connect with you after this podcast. Where can they learn from you and see your work?
So my website is maxdiscipline.com because the AI coach is named Max. And if you go there, then you can give it a try for a day and then see how good it is. I mean, actually, I want to ask you, Etienne, how many of your traders or the people that you talk to already use ChatGPT in like the manner of a coach or like with help with trading? Like, do you hear about that?
We never really discussed that. It's a good question. I don't know that anyone uses it. I know I use it for some things, but I don't know that anyone else uses it. So people can comment below if you use it. Comment in the video. I would love to hear too. Kind of curious about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, some of the people I've talked to really have been using it. In fact, the guy who helped me have that idea is a really successful trader, and he said that he's been uploading the data from his broker into ChatGPT, and it helps him analyze stuff. But it also did help him with the mindset stuff. Like he said that it really called him on his stuff. Like it wasn't terribly nice in the beginning. It really was hard on him, and that's exactly what he needed. So, excuse me, there's a lot of people who already do use ChatGPT. There's a lot of people who use it as a coach for their trading. And with my creation, it's trained in everything I've ever written or spoken about. So it's going to have all that background, but then also it can actually do that eye movement therapy. And that's where people have like real progress. So if you go to maxdiscipline.com, you can try it for free. And then the first month is 50% off. Also, you get access to me through the Discord, and there's also 24 sessions that I've created that are just recordings, but people find those to be really great. People say that working with the AI coach is a lot like working with me. It's kind of creepy in a way. And then also, like, I'm always taking one-on-one clients and have great success with that too. So maxdiscipline.com, or if you want to find out a lot more about me, then you can look me up on YouTube as well.
Awesome. We'll put those links below. People can reach out to you and see your work there. I appreciate your time here, David. It's been a lot of fun talking with you about mindset. It's been a good discussion. Hopefully people can see your work and reach out to you that way.
Yeah, thank you so much. So if there's one thing I could just leave your audience with, please don't feel bad if things don't go your way. It's not that you're a weak person, it's your biology.
I like it. Thank you. I appreciate it.